We were doing it in Larry King's studio. I was sitting in Larry King's seat. I had met King Batch a number of different times. We had this idea of like, wouldn't it be funny if we brought one of these kids from Vine onto our show?
They really were kids.
Rabble, I have a pair here. I grabbed some like old man glasses right here, and put them on. And It became this parody.
Hey, Rabble.
Hey, Alice.
How's it going?
It's good. It's good. We just got back from a series of conferences in Europe and are getting ready for VidCon.
We are getting ready for VidCons coming up in a couple of quick weeks here. So that makes this week's guest really even more fun and entertaining. So we're talking to Eric Artel this week, who was the presenter of the kind of spoof show Behind the Vine. So Eric knows so much about the beginning of Vine and all those stars. So tell us a little bit about your conversation with him.
So Behind the Vine was this spoof actors studio style TV interview program that was actually in the studio of Larry King when he was doing his stuff. And they brought the Viners in, and it was the first time that people were able to understand who the Viners were and what it was like for them to have fame. And Eric really played it up. And so many of these interviews were in character. And so we got to talk about what it was like for Vine stars as they arose and their role in the emergence of the creator economy, the idea of influencers, the idea of them being stars.
And recognizable, right? Because, I mean, in the beginning, a YouTuber was just somebody that did something on YouTube and talked about something. And then all of a sudden they kind of became famous. And then I think, Eric kind of like rightly touches on like the impact of having that pressure and that sudden kind of notoriety and people looking at you as somebody that either sets a trend or sets a tone and the toll that can take.
Absolutely. We see it with Divine now, where we've got another generation of basically high school kids who are getting on there and making videos about what's going on in their life and goofing off and making skits. And that's what the original Vine stars are. Now they're adults. Now some of them have major careers and they're influencers or they're producing, music or actors for film and television, but so many of them got started with this idea of they can just they can just grab their phone and post something online. And the fascinating thing is to see what it was like for the Viners and then realize that there's this parallel to Divine today where we're seeing the same kind of people a decade later.
Yeah, and the community that gets built. I mean, we hear as we talk to some of the original Viners, they're all still so interwoven in each other's lives that, social media has gained this reputation over the years for not being social and not building community. And yet it really is something that, I know we want to foster in Vine for sure, and that came out of Vine as well.
Absolutely. We've lost a little bit of that with this idea that you don't have an audience. Instead, you just have this algorithm and people don't get to follow you. But something that Vine really specialized in was not an endless algorithmic discovery, but instead this idea that you found content because people reposted it, they revined it, they engaged with it. And so what we're trying to do today is hearken back to that idea that you are cultivating a community as opposed to gaming an algorithm.
Exactly. Well, let's jump in and take a listen.
It's really exciting to have you on, Eric, and delve back into the sort of the world and the stories and the absurdity of Vine itself. And we're seeing that come back. I've been watching a bunch of your old videos of Behind the Vine where you're doing these mock interviews with Viners where it's real, but it's also mocked, but it's also like this parody of the Hollywood interview show. And it's super fascinating. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. And I just want to start with you are a legend, Rabble. And so it's wonderful to talk with you. You bring up Behind the Vine, and that was such a unique moment, in my opinion, in social media development. And as social media was starting to grow and as Vine was starting to What I feel like changed the landscape of content and content consumption and content creation. And it was just very gratifying and humbling to be a part of that and to be a part of that as it started to develop.
Hello, and welcome once again to Behind the Vine, where we chat with the biggest and brightest stars of Vine. Today we are joined in the studio with Andrew B. Batchelor, or better known as his stage name, King Batch.
Right.
You are on Vine, King Batch, on Twitter, King Batch, on Instagram, King Batch.
Everything is pretty much King Batch.
Everything is King Batch. Is that your motto in life?
To be the king, to dominate, yes. If that's what you mean, yes. That is what I like to do.
Excellent.
Dominate.
You do it well, sir.
For folks who don't remember, can you just explain what Behind the Vine was and how it got started and what you did on it?
If you remember Larry King, rest in peace, he was he and his family were dear friends of mine, and they started an online network after he left CNN called Aura TV, and they were looking for content. And so I brought on a couple of producers and writers because we had this concept of doing Talk Soup. If you remember the great show Talk Soup with John Henson and then Joel McHale, it was a really fun show that made fun of, at first, daytime talk shows, but then about a lot of things. So we took that concept and we said, what if we did a show about Twitter, where we reviewed the weirdness or craziness of Twitter, and we did it in 140 seconds or less. And this is what we started doing every day, was a fun, short show reviewing what was trending on Twitter, but in a kind of a lighthearted, a little bit sarcastic, snarky way. We had just a really fun time doing it. Then we started bringing on guests, and we'd have YouTubers come on as guests, and we would do kind of extended versions of this show. And then Vine started exploding. We didn't even have the term Viners yet at the time. And I had met Andrew Batchelor, King Batch. I had met King Batch a number of different times. And then we had this idea of like, wouldn't it be funny if we brought one of these kids from Vine onto our show?
They really were kids.
They were kids. And most of them, I mean, Jason Nash was an old man, but most of them were kids. And we said, wouldn't it be funny if we brought them onto our show, which was called at the time Daily Rehash? And we said to them, hey, let's watch a clip from your Vine. And then the joke was, why would you watch a clip of a 6-second video? So that was like the nut of the idea. I was with Batch again, and I said, hey, do you want to come on and let's do a show, do an interview? And he's like, yeah, man, of course. I would love to. And then when we knew we were getting King Batch, and it was right when he became the most followed person on Vine. So then we thought, we're having the most popular Viner on the world, and let's do something more with that. And at the time, there was a wonderful show called Inside the Actors Studio with James Lipton. And if no one's ever seen it, look it up. And in those interviews, he couldn't have loved the celebrities more. He was such he just loved whatever A-list celebrity he had on as an interview. And so I grabbed a bow tie, I grabbed a jacket, I in fact grabbed you know what? I have them here. Rabble, I have a pair here. I grabbed some like old man glasses right here, and put them on, and it became this parody, my version of James Lipton. And what it turned into was interviewing these Viners, and they could do no wrong in my eyes. Like, I was the number one Vine fan, but we made it into a very serious, toned interview, but very dry. And you put it perfectly. It's a parody interview. It's a total parody interview. And so they would come on, and the Viners would come on, and Batch was the first one. And sometimes they would do a character. So Batch does a total character in his interview where he's like, well, I want to come in and pretend like I'm this multi-Oscar winner, stuck-up actor. And so he comes on and just puts on a fun, and it just created a very fun interplay. And so we started doing those Behind the Vines every week. I think we released 40 or 45 of them. And we just started going down the list of popular Viners and connecting with all the popular Viners. And so we had Logan Paul, Jake Paul, Brittany Furlan, Lele Pons. Just as people started to rise, like, can we get them in? It started to become kind of a feather in the cap of these Viners. Like, have they been on Behind the Vine before? for many of them, it was the first time they'd ever done something like an interview. But now in the world of podcasts, it's not uncommon for people to be doing interviews
No, people do
everywhere.
podcasts all the time. I mean, so, I don't know if you remember, but Twitter started out as a podcasting company.
That's right.
We were trying to do podcasting first, and we tried to convince the world that podcasting was going to be a thing. And it was, we built this tools for editing and producing stuff. And then we went to NPR and we said to NPR, we're like, you should do podcasts. And NPR's like, no one will ever listen to podcasts. We have radio transmitters and we have affiliate stations. And like this podcasting thing will never take off. And it took another decade to do it, but now we don't forget that we have this voice, we have this sort of ability to do long form content, and in many ways, Your Behind the Vine feels like a video podcast before we had the words for it.
As the video podcast started coming out, I think that's what we realized is that's what we had, and that's what we had done. Now, unfortunately, for the sad history, if you will, of Behind the Vine, the company that we were doing it in Larry King's studio. I was sitting in Larry King's seat, and the Viners would come in and sit. That company made a lot of changes and then ceased to exist. So we stopped doing the show. But I can't tell you, Rabble, how many people have come up to me afterwards and said, "Man, I wish I'd been on. I wanted to be on Behind the Vine. I wanted to, do a show." And so we got plans. We got plans for the future, my friend.
So much of this year is about connecting back to a decade ago, like thinking back to 2016. Like, what if we could like restart history with an alternative timeline where Trump didn't get elected, where we didn't have Cambridge Analytica, where Vine wasn't shut down, and sort of how can we have a restart with a different set of values, a sort of nostalgia looking back to what 2016 and 2015 were, but also saying, well, what if we take that future forward?
I think what you've done with Divine and what I've seen with people talking about it, about the idea of making it gate kept from AI generated content is critical. I think it's critical. And it's so exhilarating and liberating. And look, I know that there are a lot of creators who will want to get onto Divine and they'll want to be able to create their edited videos and post their edited videos. But you can't right now. You can't. And by the way, Rabble, the first thing I did when I got onto Divine, and I thought, oh, well, you know what? I've got a great video that I would love to post also on Divine. And it's like, wait, where do you get your camera roll? I can't even find my camera. Where do I get my camera roll?
I added an upload button.
There is an upload button.
There is an upload button, and you click on it, and it says, "This is why we don't have uploads." Because everybody was searching through the app. They're like, how do I upload? How do I do it? And I'm like, no, I should put in the camera. We have a classic mode, which is exactly like the original Vine app. And then we have a new one, which is, more inspired by CapCut and stuff you get in Instagram, where you've got different tracks and you can overlay audio and you can, make sort of clips and things like that. And so I eventually just recently added an upload button as an upload camera option because we needed to explain to people why we don't do upload. And the reason we don't do upload is sort of a bit of twofold. Like the original reason was I can't confirm it's not AI. Like we have this problem with AI content is the AI content gets better and better and better and better.
It's too good. It's too good.
It's too good and it's too polished. It's more polished than we could ever make it be. Even with the best artificial intelligence against artificial intelligence trying to detect where it is, we can't do it. So what we're doing is we have this sort of technology that tracks the provenance and the editing all the way from the camera through when you watch it. And it embeds this sort of certificates of authenticity. And so what we do is we have it there. And so you have to use our camera or in the future, other camera software and editing software that keeps this information there. And it verifies things like who did the video, like what are your social media accounts, like who created this thing, when it was created, what kind of device it was created on, what the edits were on it, how the thing evolved over time. And you can flag whether or not you want to be excluded from this video being mined in artificial intelligence. So when you upload something to Divine, it like we're embedding in there that this cannot be used for mining. I mean, obviously, the AI companies don't seem to care about laws and things like that, but we state that they're violating the rules. The thing about Vine was it was so authentic.
Yeah.
It felt like you had all these scenes and these people and these like high school kids posting videos. You saw them come together and you saw the emergence of the humor in it. Wonder if you could talk about the way in which like creativity worked on Vine and the way in which
Yeah.
it developed its own sense of humor.
Vine really brought this short form content creation and enjoyment and consumption to the forefront. When talking with a lot of these Vine creators, 'cause I got to know a lot of the creators, and they became experts in this. And experts, by the way, Rabble, experts in content creation like you're describing, in-app, where that is your limitation and you have to be authentic and genuine in what you are creating and figure out how to create it. I remember, by the way, when people started to figure out how to like code break Vine and figure out how to like edit some stuff and get it up in there before Vine just allowed you to do it. And so people were putting stuff up and then the consumers like, how is this practical? How is this actually happening? But prior to that, particularly, some of these kids, some of these creators who were just creating very consumable, authentic, genuine, and fun content. I think that was one of the key parts about it, is it was so fun. There's something about the actual physical, practical thing that is there in front of you. And this is obviously talking about AI, but this is also talking about content creation where you literally have to do everything right there. You can't just go into an editing bay and change things and add things and stuff like that. And there's something so fun about that. And there's a reason why back in the olden days, slapstick comedy worked so well. Like there was a resurgence of slapstick comedy, I feel like, as we saw people like Lele Pons get so famous on Vine. And she was a slapstick comedy master. It was all slapstick comedy and all done right there in the app.
Nobody wanna see us together, but it don't matter.
I will say that with Divine coming back, we lost that for a while.
We ended up with a different kind of social media. We ended up with a social media that was more about a polished thing that was longer, that, that was optimized not for the enjoyment of the audience, but for what the algorithm will build you an audience. Sort of, here's a movie clip and I'm not going to tell you what movie it is because I want you to go to the comments and post a comment asking what movie it is, because that'll drive the algorithm. And you're like, oh no, I just, the clip looks great. I would love to know what movie it was from. And that, in Vine, you went and you followed people, and the people you followed would revine stuff and they would share it with others. And you weren't trying to just game the algorithm.
The content has become, it pendulums, right? And it had pendulumed to such a polished version of things. And I truly do believe, by the way, that content in recent time has started to swing back, that the authenticity and the genuineness and rawness of content, there's been a resurgence of that on some of the other social media platforms. And so that's why I think it's such a wonderful time for Divine to come back, because it will feed what people have been longing for, because they've been getting so much of this polished stuff and unreal stuff. And now they just want reality, and they want real fun, enjoyment, practical, genuine authenticity.
Yeah, they want something that makes them giggle, makes them laugh, like, and not where they're having to question it all the time. I mean, for me, that was the reason, because I have this podcast and I post my own social media content, but I don't consider myself a creator. But I was a consumer of this, and which, obviously is people's self-perceptions. It's no longer true. Like I'm obviously interviewing you. I'm creating content. But my reason for filtering out the AI content wasn't some strategic thing. It wasn't like I know where trends are going and this is what I'm going to do. It was just like I had sat there on TikTok and on Instagram and I had looked at these videos and I had developed the habit of going to the comments and scrolling to the top and seeing what the top comment is and seeing, say, if it says it's AI, because I felt tricked. Sometimes I watch AI generated content and I think it's great and I think it's funny and I think it's interesting and I think it's possible to do great storytelling. But what we had was it felt dishonest. I didn't think Divine would blow up. Like I was going to launch it and go on we were in Lisbon and I was going to go on. I was like, you know what? I could get a really cheap ticket to Morocco. I've never been to Morocco. I'm going to go on vacation. I'm going to launch Divine and go on vacation to Morocco. We launched it at Web Summit and we put it in TechCrunch, sort of normal Silicon Valley ways of launching something. And then something happened and all of these Viners started showing up. Lele started sending me DMs asking for a beta account and like early access. And that was this moment where I realized that it wasn't just something of the past, but there's something today people wanted. You sat down with all these Viners, you created a story, you took their 6-second celebrity and gave them a longer form. Like, what was it like to show more of the reality of these people's lives rather than the 6 seconds? Because I only knew them in the 6 seconds. Now I've gotten to know people and I've gotten to talk to people and everything else. And I realize that, and I watch all these longer form interviews and these podcasts. But when you did Behind the Vine, the only thing people had seen of these famous Viners was their skits.
From a personal standpoint, it was very, very enjoyable getting to know them and who they were. And some people surprised me. Others is like, oh, this tracks. You're very much like what you are in front of people, or on the app. Behind the Vine is it's a product. It's a created product, right? It's not intended to be what the real version of an interview show, like Inside the Actor Studio. Inside the Actor Studio was intended to be like, let's really find out who you are. But it's more, lives in the land of Between Two Ferns, almost, with Zach Galifianakis, where it's a parody product. And you don't quite know exactly if this person is like that. I mean, Curtis Lepore, who came on, he's like, I brought my little hands, and I want to do this interview like the little hands are my actual hands. And so we did the whole interview as if this is who Curtis Lepore is. Anytime he does a video with real hands, they're not his real hands. He's got little hands. It was an enjoyable product. It is an enjoyable product for audiences to be able to watch and try to suss out, are these people really like this or not? Usually they'll know that they're not quite like that. There was a lot of improvisation that we did in this show. When we had Jason Nash on, Jason Nash has a very long comedy background. He already was in his 40s when he was on the show. Before he even got to Vine, he had comedy pilots in Hollywood, and he just a comedic veteran. And so we did a lot of improvisation during that. And he went to some crazy places. And there was a time when I was sitting at that desk and Jason is screaming at me. Spittle is coming out of his mouth. And I literally thought, he might attack me. Like, he might actually hit me right now because he was that good. And then, interview's over and Jason's like, yeah, okay, great, Eric, this is so much fun. Like, oh, great. And so it was such an enjoyable experience to do that and to allow these Viners, to allow these guests to express themselves in this longer format the way they wanted to express themselves.
Fucking bullshit! Again with the lies. There's no screen here. Did you learn anything from my last diatribe?
Well, I was listening.
I'm not into people that use other people. I'm not your dad. I'm not your dad. Well, that's bullshit. I don't think that's the real DNA. That's not a. You couldn't have got it that fast.
It was a turnaround lab.
Everybody at home, it's not real. That's not real.
It was a parody. It was a parody.
No, and because it was entertainment. It wasn't trying to be a hard journalism of like, let's go behind the curtain and break the veil of who these people are. It was, here's a different way of communicating that and publishing it. Some of the interviews you do, it's clear that the Vine stars are very new. Like they've been doing it for a couple months and they just blew up and they have no idea what it is and their career hasn't adjusted to it. And some of the people you did further on were more adjusted to being that. And I'm curious what it was like to see these people go from I'm just a kid or in Hollywood but not a star to coming to terms with being recognized, like being like they went from shooting videos with friends to things like VidCon, where I'm going to be speaking next month, and being mobbed. Like that was a huge transition. I was wondering if you talked to any of them about that or had any sense of what it was like for them.
Most of them, if not all of them, it was really the first time that they sat down across a table in an atmosphere like that. And some people, we had one guest who could not stop laughing. Like they could not stop laughing because it was such a foreign experience to them, and it was just so odd. And you're right, there was a certain innocence with a lot of them. Like they were oftentimes new to LA. Because we shot in LA and a lot of these Viners, when they were starting to get big, and then they
moved to LA.
They moved to LA because that's what you do, right? And that's what I did many years ago for acting. I wouldn't say deer in the headlights, but certainly there was an innocence or not a naivete, but a less jaded attitude towards things.
Yep.
And then I've since then, I mean, this was a number of years ago. And so since then I've worked with, I've communicated with, I've hung out with many of the people that were on the show, and they're more seasoned. And some of them are, maybe actually many of them are a little more cynical. The industry has taken them and shaken them up a little and created thicker skin. And there's not that same wide-eyed wonder of innocence. And I mean, going back to what we were talking about, the enjoyment, the innocent fun of it all. So often when we had our guests on, because they were all so new, there was this innocence of fun. And since then, there are plenty who have kind of lost that innocence of fun. And in a certain respect, it's sad in a certain way, because that's so hard to hold on to. And it's like you're saying, they go to VidCon and that they're getting mobbed, and they've become a role model, whether they wanted to or not. They've become a role model. And many, I shouldn't say many, there certainly are people who never wanted to be a role model. I'll say that what happens, one of the dangers that happens is the effect on your mental health when that comes along. I certainly saw in some people, some people who just disappeared from the social media landscape because it was so damaging to their mental health. This increase in popularity, this pressure, so many pressures, right? The pressure of being a role model, which that is a huge pressure, particularly if you didn't want to be, or if you don't think you're worthy enough, or you don't want people to be like you. The pressure,
or you didn't always behave as a role model that you would want people to emulate.
Exactly. The pressure of continuing to succeed, continuing to make content. In talking about like the leaderboard, one of the dangers of making that is then the people feeling the pressure to stay up on the leaderboard. And oh my goodness, the pressure of people when they would post something, and what will certainly probably happen now with Divine coming back, are the text message groups that these creators would have. And I'm sure you're probably aware of them, but there would be different communities of creators who would have their own text message groups. And they would all, when they were about to post a Vine, they would put it into the chat. And like, was it a heater or was it a delete? Was it something that everybody thought was going to be great, or would people say, no, this is terrible, don't post that? And there's a lot of just friendship pressure there. There's a lot of social pressure there. So much pressure that they started to experience after they came to LA and they started to become big, going, like you were saying, going to VidCons and speaking in front of all these kids and getting mobbed. That takes a huge mental health toll. It really does. And some people handle it better than others.
And the irony of, when we created social media, when we sort of the web 2.0 era of like, we're going to democratize the media, the whole point was in many ways make everyone have access, and we're going to get rid of gatekeepers, and we're going to get rid of things. But the what you're getting at is the way in which those gatekeepers and those structures and those institutions around celebrity helped protect celebrity. Like the original movie stars from the 1920s and 30s didn't have that original set of protections. And a whole industry grew up around this and what people were doing. And so I think that, some of the downside is like, okay, these are almost child stars, some of
Yeah.
them as teenagers, and they show up in Hollywood and they don't have agents and they don't have, the structure that, Hollywood does not treat child stars very well, but it has some structure to help try and minimize that damage. And the Vine stars who eventually become influencers and creators, they didn't have that.
Yeah. And I think I've heard you say this, but it was so much a wild, wild west, right? In the social landscape, social media landscape, and it still is to a certain degree. And I've been involved in social media uh, with a lot of creators, and it's becoming. There are certainly institutional organizations that are trying to do what you're talking about. We're trying to create sort of a structure, a system where it's like, okay, I now know that I can take these steps, but it is still kind of wide open. And then you bring in Divine, where where, where it's like saying, hey, it is way wide open now again.
Hey, just a quick interruption to ask you to follow revolution.social on your podcast app of choice or on YouTube. And if you're already following us, please rate and review it. Tell a friend about the show. If you're interested in finding out more about Divine, you can sign up and join the app. Use the invite code REVS2026. Thank you so much.
One of the things that I was thinking about too, Rabble, as we're talking about this is obviously with Behind the Vine and with Vine, it's been what, 10, 12 years?
Yeah, 10 years since it. 12 years, I think, since Behind the Vine, and 10 years since the announcement of shutting it down happened.
And so the temptation is to look at it and go, well, it can't be what it was, right? Because all these Viners they've moved on. They're doing the Paul brother, like they're in wrestling and boxing, and I mean everybody's kind of moved on, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is there's a whole new generation of genius, wonderful, incredible creators.
That's the most amazing thing. Like when I look at this and I look at Divine, it's the same high school kids. Just a decade later, these were like they were in preschool and like little teeny kids when the Vine was around, and now they're in high school and they're shooting in their classroom and in the school hallway and on the basketball court and in the playground. And I'm just like, oh my God, it's the same thing as the Viners. Yeah.
It's back, right? But with new people and with quote unquote fresh blood. And I would also add, it's not just the teenagers, the younger generation, but it becomes accessible then for all these people who might be older, who might be 20, 30, 40, 50, who looked at what the social media content creation landscape was like and said, I can't do that. Like, I don't have editing skills. I don't have Premiere. I don't have, I can't go into AI and try to create incredible stuff. I can't do that. I would have some fun ideas to do stuff, but I can't do that. And now it provides a new this platform again. I'm reminded of, I don't know if you ever remember Will Sasso's content that he would do on Vine. He did a whole series where he would just take a lemon and he would like start to put it into his mouth. And it was just so quick cut. And like he would start choking on a lemon and then spit out lemonade. Like that was the gag. And Will Sasso is so talented in so many other areas, but that was essentially his Vine account, was this just hilarious gag. That gag, if he had tried to launch that in the Musical.ly TikTok era, would have gone nowhere.
Try that again.
That, in my mind, is the number one thing that Vine put onto the face of the earth is short form. I mean, short form entertainment. And my goodness, the Viners that just would have killed for one extra second of record time. But nope, not available. It was not available for a long time.
But they went to 140. So I don't, people forget this now, but like one of the experiments that Vine did as it was starting to decline was they let you go to 140 seconds. I have yet to find a Vine video in the archive that had an audience that was more than 6 seconds. Like
Isn't that interesting?
So like people didn't use that extra time.
Right. And also the consumers didn't want that on that app. Because they knew what they wanted, and there was a certain type of content that they wanted, and that's what rose to the top. And I think, again, as this pendulum is swinging, because all these apps, you know, they Musical.ly comes with their short form, and then TikTok buys it, but then they see, and it's like the apps are chasing certain things also because they see what YouTube's doing and how YouTube can monetize with their longer form content. So like, great, we need to institute certain longer form content, and Instagram Reels, Meta comes into play, and everyone's kind of chasing certain carrots and certain nuggets, and it kind of goes back to, Rabble, what you've built your career. I don't want to speak for you, but almost like what you've built your career on, in this idea of not chasing those corporate dollars, not chasing those institutions and what the institutions need or want to provide, but let's chase what humans want to just respond to in an authentic and ungated way, if you will, in a very, you know, in a way that that they don't feel like something is being force fed to them, but they want to just be able to enjoy something that they want to enjoy.
Yeah, no, there was a conversation we had when we were creating Twitter, which was what are we building? Because we had been doing podcasting and we went up against Apple, and Apple just like crushed us as a business, and we had money in the bank and we had a team of people who were interesting and creative, but we didn't have a product that was working. And so we did this thing where we went through and we looked at every social app and product that we had all used growing up, like what we used in university on a system and what we used in, like, this is, 2005, 2006. So, there's little hints of stuff. And I had built this text message based system that we used at protests, and we had done some like live streaming stuff, but it was really, really funky. And, I can't remember who said it. I think it might have been Tony Sellerbine, who's now CEO of Medium, which was just like, look, it just is the same. It's just like the humans are the same. Like we are needing to do the same things, but the technology, the constraints, the rules of which we operate, those change over time. And so if you want to know where the future is, you just need to look at what humanity has done for the last couple 100,000 years and say, if we can do it where instead of sitting around a campfire, you are looking at the phone, but you get that experience of being that person, or, the epic stories of like the Iliad and the Odyssey, or all these things, like those are all the same. Like we want to feel community, we want the connection, and we want to tell stories. We make sense of the world in stories. We want to fall in love, and we want to be cared for, and we want to take care of people, and we want to have our needs met, and we want to feel satisfied and appreciated. And if we just do those again in the new technology, then it will work. And if we try and do something that isn't human, like, then it doesn't work. And that's the fascinating thing about Vine and the short form videos is like, you know, it is, yes, it's new and different, but it's also the same. It's like, it's not different than like the pamphlets that Thomas Paine was printing, or the novel, or radio, or like storytelling, or like the hootenanny where people get together and play music. Like now you can listen to someone on the other side of the world, but we're still doing the same stuff.
Rabble, I'm just going to sing your praises again. Just thinking about how you've been on the front lines of just absolutely global shaping moments. I truly feel like one of the things that Twitter did, and you brought it up, is this idea of people being able to find their community. And like you said, it's just sitting around a campfire. Who do you sit around a campfire with? You sit around a campfire with your community. You're going to most enjoy sitting around a campfire with people who you're going to be enjoying talking to. And will there be disagreements? Yes, but mostly it's people that you're your people.
You got that parasocial relationship. You got that feeling like you were, people joked about Twitter of like, oh, it's stupid. It's like what I've had for breakfast and what I might have missed the bus, or all these other things, like random stuff. I used to say that it was the stuff that was not important enough to tell your friends when you got together for coffee. It was the ephemerality. And eventually it becomes the ephemerality of all society, and you feel like you got the zeitgeist. But Vine, it was different because you could see people.
Some of the most successful influencers or creators are the ones who are relatable to their audience, where the audience can look and go, this is one of me. This is my people. And I think that's what, in video form, like you were saying, Vine helped to create. And what Divine is going to help to bring back is like, who are my people? And like, if I don't like what you're doing, you're not one of my people. And that's fine.
The funniest thing was, so we don't allow uploads, and we don't allow uploads because we can't confirm it's not AI content. But what I didn't expect was the way in which not allowing uploads forced originality. That was the thing that blew me away, is that if I go to, there's a one called Skylight, and it's like Blue Sky's platform, but short form video. And they have a lot of people on there. There's Upscrolled, which is another one that got a bunch of attention recently. And you go on there, and mostly you see reposted content. Mostly you see clipped content. You mostly see some sort of subset of what is on larger platforms. And what I didn't expect, and this was not planned, with Divine was you see not that. You see, because you have to make original content, and people do references and everything else, you see something that is truly unique and harkens back to the original Vine, and we mix them. You can, like, you're watching a feed. You see the old ones and the new ones back and forth, and you see the old Viners posting new stuff. And it's hilarious because they're the same, but a decade older. That originality was something I hadn't figured out and hadn't experienced. But it was something that, I mean, you see in your work, which is like Behind the Vine, where you were like, this is nothing like the parody shows that you were parodying because of that unique creativeness.
Yeah. And I would say that if the heavens align and we wind up doing Behind Divine,
Yeah.
another round, that to that point of how there's a whole new stable of creators who are doing things, and who are doing things that are original, and who are doing things that are creative, and are showing just 6 seconds of it. And I think that then becomes that would then become again the success of something like Behind Divine, where you get, like you were saying, a taste of a longer version of these new kids, new creators who are only putting out their 6 seconds of stuff.
Yep.
And the communities who have felt like this is one of my people, now I want to get to know more about them. I want to get to know more about them. And I think again, Rabble, I can't stop thinking about this idea of finding your community and that relatability idea. I don't know if you know some of the nonprofit work that I'm doing. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit,
No,
Nerd
tell us about it.
HQ. So it's a nonprofit called Nerd HQ, Nerds for Mental Health, and we've been programmatic for about a year and a half. But our main mission is to provide therapy for people who can't afford it. Our founder, who had a mental breakdown, suicidal thoughts, didn't want to live, didn't know why, and therapy helped save his life. And so he wanted to take his celebrity and create this nonprofit to try to help other people. And if therapy can be the thing that can help save them or help bring them happier hearts or healthier minds or a better relationship or help them overcome addiction, and if they can't afford it, we want to pay for it. Just a very, very simple mission statement.
A few years ago, we moved to New Zealand. And so I have the experience, I'm an American, but I live in New Zealand now. And I got to experience a different healthcare system. I got to experience a healthcare system that was like, oh my God, you have a teenager who is feeling depressed. Let's send a mental health nurse to your house at 7 p.m. on a Friday night because we care about the mental health of people. And so we're going to spend money on it. And so, in the case of the United States, it's too hard to get the entire government around to it. And so we have to have, nonprofits like yours help fill the gap and show the example. Because if you have the example of the nonprofit, eventually be like, oh, no, this should be for everyone. This should be publicly funded.
Yes. And unfortunately, it's not now, and it's expensive. And we have a wonderful partnership with a company called Timely Care, who they have a network of virtual therapists who anybody can go now. And if they can't afford it, they can come in and get help. And within 24 to 36 hours, they can be in a therapy session. But then there's also a hotline available and mental health resources. In thinking about mental health, there was an incredible study done, and now my brain is going blank. I can't remember which university it was, but they followed a group of people, of graduates, for decades, and examined their mental health. And one of the most powerful aspects of what positively affected the person's mental health over 20, 30, 40 years after leaving college was friendship.
Yep.
Community. Right?
Yeah.
That's what community is.
We're
And
social creatures.
we are social creatures. And that's not to say that there certainly are people who don't like to be social, and that is better for them. And I get it. But this idea of community is so important for people's mental health. And what we've done on our nonprofit side is we have a wonderful, if people go to nerdhq.org, you can go check stuff out. There's a wonderful button that you can click on called Find Your Nerd. And we have started building out pages where it's not just mental health nerds, because we can all be mental health nerds, right? But we're all nerdy about something. Rabble, like you're nerdy about something. I'm nerdy about a lot of different things, whether it's Broadway musicals, golf, other sports. I'm nerdy about a lot of things. We're all nerdy about something. And that is what community is, because people have interests. They have similar interests. And so we've started building out these different pages. Like, for instance, we have a bodybuilding nerds page, and we have this a wonderful video when people go to that from this creator who is a huge bodybuilder. He's a competition, but he's a big mental health advocate. And anyone who is a bodybuilder who might not relate to a Comic-Con Avengers nerd, right? Marvel nerd, but they can go to this page, bodybuilder. They find their people. They see this guy. There's a video from this influencer who's a bodybuilder talking straight to camera in a purely authentic, genuine way, saying mental health's important. Stay on this earth. You can get help.
Before we wrap up, though, I want to ask you about the decline of Vine, because, when did you sense that it was over? Like, when did you, I know that Behind the Vine wrapped up before Vine sort of started to shut down itself, but, like, you were involved, you were talking to people, you were engaged with all these creators. Like, was there a single moment, or was it a slow process by which it looked like Vine had passed its zenith?
I would say that you started seeing the writing on the wall, at least to a certain extent, when so much money was being made. And that's not to say that it's not a good thing for people to make money. It's a great thing for people to make money. And if there are opportunities for people to make money, fantastic. You started seeing some of the very larger creators getting wooed away to other platforms. And then, to me at least, and again, everybody's going to have some different answers to this, but to me, that's when you could start to see the writing on the wall. Because
Yep.
Meta came in, you talked about Facebook. I mean, there was a, if people don't know, there was a lot of money being thrown around, and there was a lot of money to woo people. I don't know all the ins and outs of, the cost that it was, the cost of maintaining Vine.
Oh, no,
and
I know, because I had a conversation with Jack Dorsey a couple weeks ago. He said it was costing him $40 to $50 million a month to keep Vine running.
And that is true, because that was some numbers that I had heard. All right, I wasn't sure if it was true. There we go. Thank you for confirming. I would say this is probably 2015, getting into 2016. And I remember being at some of these like Vine hosted events with a lot of the big creators. There was a lot of discussion of, where am I going? Like, I need to find the new outlet, because the numbers aren't there anymore. And the money is not quite there. There's more money elsewhere. So I need my exit strategy.
Yep.
Vine was still going. There were
Yep.
still kids getting bigger. There were, I knew some of the creators who were like just on the rise when Vine died, and they were just hitting their 1 million, 2 million followers. And probably in their minds, they were like, I'm going to get to that level and be making that kind of money that I saw some of these OGs making, if you will. But there was a strong undercurrent from what I saw of these major Viners, the faces of Vine.
Mhm.
What's my exit strategy? Where do I go now? Where can I follow the money?
It wasn't working for them. They had transitioned into being professional creators.
They had transitioned to being professional creators.
And Vine wasn't working for them.
And Vine wasn't working for them, or when people start making a lot of money, they start spending a lot of money, and they have to keep making a lot of money. And so there were plenty of people who, in their minds, are like, I need to keep making this amount of money, and I don't see this happening on Vine. And I see my other, my compatriots, other creators on other platforms, and there are these platforms with money and blah, 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 blah. It sounds so trite, but I truly feel like money was one of the determining factors. Obviously, with Vine shutting down and the amount of money that was costing to keep it going, that is what, but from the creator perspective.
Well, but Twitter and Vine never figured out how to make money itself from the platform. Like, they never implemented there wasn't direct payments. There wasn't a brand sponsorship thing. There wasn't advertising. Like, there were many, many different business models that Vine could have implemented, and they never did. And that, I think, was also part of it. We've spent in building Divine what it cost to run Vine for like 2 or 3 days. So the cost of building these things is different, and we are building on an open source and an open protocol and a bunch of other things like that. And the technology has changed. But, to me, the thing of this whole podcast, where I've interviewed all these different people, from CEOs of Substack and Medium and, Jack with Twitter and all these other people, is like, we can't ignore the economic incentives.
Right.
Like, the economic incentives, the economic system, we exist in an economic world. Like, the money is real, and you can pretend on social media that it isn't real, but servers and developers and designers cost money. Making the content costs money, and people want to be able to support themselves around this. And it's important to remember that if you just ignore it, it doesn't go away.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is something you want to get into and talk about and on this format, but w- what are some of those discussions are you allowed to talk about? What are some of those discussions that are happening with Divine to address those scenarios?
Yeah, so, the first one is trying to get the diviners to think about this more like they think about podcasting. So in the podcasting world, there are many apps. You choose your hosts, you choose your ad partners, you're allowed to run ads. It's encouraged as part of it. And so if we can make a world in which the creators aren't dependent on us as the platform, but they're able to make money on it, and we're able to make money at the same time, there's something there, Um, you know, I don't know if micropayments make sense and the way in which it makes sense with live streaming, but that's something we're going to experiment with. I don't know if subscription content makes sense for letting people do that stuff, but obviously that works. You don't pay for, it's funny. I spent a while thinking about, like, why do people pay for OnlyFans? Or why do you pay for a magazine subscription? Why do you pay for the New York Times? And I think that you pay for the New York Times and OnlyFans for the same reason, which is because you can get the content anywhere. Like, there's an abundance amount of really good news content. You can get Wordle-like apps, but what you're paying for is to be part of something. The same reason you join a public radio station. You are a New York Times subscriber. You are an OnlyFans subscriber. And so if you think about it, it's like you're not paying for the content, you're paying for the connection, you're paying for the community, you're paying to show that you matter to this community and that you want to support it. This is what we see with Patreon. So in the business model, our thing is like, how do we create spaces by which creators can build communities, and then their supporters, their fans, can then support them. And so there's that. And then there is the reality, which is that this is a large audience, and there are brands, and there is marketing, and you have things like, Procter and Gamble shifting half of their $10 billion a year budget for advertising into paying creators. And like, what does that mean? And how does that work? And how do we do it in an ethical way that doesn't feel creepy? And so we've had conversations with movie studios. We did this deal with, with Sony around the Spider-Man movie, where we got, Jimmy to come on and do, it's a brand new Wednesday, my dudes, and in his Spider-Man outfit, and then got, Sony to have a Divine account for Sony Pictures, and one for the Spider-Man movie. And so there's things in which we can explore healthy, positive ways of doing some brand deals and things like that, where the creators get benefit from it. But we don't know. I didn't think this was going to blow up. I thought 10,000 people were going to sign up for Divine, and it was going to be really cool for people who are obsessed with internet history. And it was really neat that we gave people pages and we got back the old videos, and no one would create new ones. And I made the ability to create new ones because I thought it would be a fun idea. And this was an experiment, and it was a one-person project. And then it blew up, and hundreds of millions of people started getting excited about it and saying Vine's back. So we're just figuring this shit out.
Listen, Rabble, I've done a lot of stuff in the comic convention world, also because of our nonprofit Nerd HQ. We're in in the nerd world. Nostalgia sells. Nostalgia is popular. Nostalgia is popular, and people love nostalgia, and so it's no surprise to me that it is. And it's just so interesting hearing you talking about some of those kinds of discussions. I knew the Musical.ly team when they were 7 people out of a WeWork office in San Francisco, and I remember going to their WeWork offices and talking with the people that were there, and seeing these kinds of discussions. And obviously Musical.ly came kind of on the heels of Vine, and they started just experimenting with a lot of these different things that you're talking about, and seeing how do we make this happen? And because they were very aware of all the things that you're talking about, and now it's grown into, and there's no right answer. There's no right answer.
No, there's no right answer, but there are wrong answers.
That's interesting.
There are answers that lead us to antisocial behavior. One of the things that blew me away talking to creators today is how little of the ad revenue they get around the content. So I look at videos on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube Shorts, and I see the ads, and I'm like, well, okay, in some ways it's okay that I see some ads because that's subsidizing the content creators that I'm seeing it next. And then I go to talk to the creators, and they're like, well, YouTube long form, we make money from. Like YouTube long form, the ads are showing in our content, everything else. But the creator funds, the funds from platforms that like Facebook Video and these others provided, those were temporary funding. And so many creators and musicians on Spotify, they put that content out and they have to find a business model that is different than that. And because they're not actually benefiting from those ads. And it's the question is like, why are we getting these ads? So that a few companies can make, trillions of dollars? Like, what societal benefit is that?
Right. Right. Oh man, I would love to be in some of those conversations at some point in Rabble, because I've got so many thoughts and ideas about that. Also to hear the perspectives of the various creators too, because it's something certainly to figure out. Thank you for sharing about Divine. I think what I hope happens, and also why it would be so fun to do something like Behind Divine and having these new fresh faces on, is that the environment that is able to be maintains that fresh, fun environment.
Fun is important. When I give people the Divine app and I install it, they giggle. They laugh and they giggle and they're like, I didn't think this would come back. I didn't think I would get to see this. I didn't think I'd get an internet that was healthy and fun and quixotic and weird. And I thought it was all about, big audiences and things like that. And I think that, I think we need weird. I think we need fun. Like it doesn't just have to be a nostalgia of a past that we never get back to, but we can restore stuff that worked in the past.
And because there are so many humans on this earth, Rabble, and new humans who, who in the last 10, 15 years have become of age to provide fun, and they all love having fun.
Yeah.
I'm a big improv guy. I've taught improv and performed improv for many decades. And what's so amazing about it is people lose as people grow older. As when people are little kids, their idea of imaginative play is so strong. They have a wonderful sense of imaginative play and this idea of fun. And as they get older, just because of whatever it might be, parenting, school, society, other institutions, hammer into them, kind of dampening their creativity and their imagination. But it's just, for humans, it's bursting. It's just, they want to get it out. They want to be able to have this imaginative play again. And improv is a wonderful way, obviously, and training to help people reconnect with that imagination and bring that play back. Something like Divine, it's offering to a new generation exactly that. It's offering to them this opportunity to just have fun. I love it.
There's no better way to wrap this up. Thank you, Eric, so much for all of your work. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you for sharing the stories of all of the Viners. And I encourage people to go back and look at, watch the old videos, like the Behind the Vine videos. Like they're still online, and I've watched so many of those interviews, and they're absolutely hilarious. Hopefully, we'll figure out a way to make more.
I love it. Thank you so much, Rabble. It's been so fun chatting with you, and I can't wait to see what the future provides with it. Can't wait to talk more.
Awesome. Thanks again to Eric Artel for coming on revolution.social. Our intro and outro music is a remix of the Italian anti-fascist song Bella Ciao, courtesy of White Records.
Our executive producer is me, Alice Chan from Flock Marketing.
Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share this episode if you liked it. To sign up for our email newsletter, visit revolution.social.
And for more interviews like this one, follow revolution.social on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Nostos, Fountain.fm, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And to paraphrase the Zapatista subcomandante Marcos, we need a social media revolution to make revolution possible. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. See you then.